This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Yep.
We're good to go. All right. Very good. We are on. We are Resonance. Mike Farrell, Steve Azar, Randy Harrington. And we're going to dive in today to a concept that is, I think, showing up in a lot of the sessions that we're doing. And what we're hearing a lot is that there is a need for speed. People are saying we need to move quicker. We need to be faster on turnover because windows of opportunity are opening and closing super quick these days. It's a digital world and we need to pick up our pace. And the other thing I'm hearing a lot is we need momentum. We need to get some energy moving into a direction toward the future. And so in thinking about that, some of the best lessons I ever learned about this came from the time that I spent working as a consultant at Microsoft. And at Microsoft, the whole world there works around this concept of the rhythm of the business, or the ROB. And so I really liked the framing of that rhythm of the business concept. But when you work inside that, boy, oh boy, it's serious business, because that means on Jan 30, always something has to be done. On June 30, end of fiscal, always this has to be done. And so there's all this kind of orientation to those big milestones in the calendar. And everybody, the thousands and thousands of divisions and people who work at Microsoft, must all align with that rhythm of the business. And that's the way this giant organization manages to have some cohesion and functionality and orientation in their strategic planning. And so I'm going to pause there and pitch it over to you, Steve, because as soon as I said rhythm of the business, I saw your eyes go ka-ching. They kind of lit up, because I have a feeling that you live and breathe by rhythm in a different way. Speak to me, man.
Well, you'd think it's the drummer, right? Well,
I would.
it is the drummer, but equally is the guitar players, the singers, in my case, I'm the singer and one of the guitar players,
And the bass players, man. The bass players always look cool. They do. They're standing back. They're not doing it. Boom, boom,
I'm
boom,
not going
boom,
to tell my
boom,
bass
boom.
player called him cool. I can't handle it. It'll be like this. Now, anyway, so let me explain this. So when I know my musicians, so a lot of mine have been with me. One's retired from me. One's 31 years now. One's 26. One's 21. Before that, so as I was able to find my guys over the course of my time in Nashville, before and during Nashville and then back, I was able to really handpick those particular spots on the stage. So it's like you're building a team.
Sure.
In my mind, I have to have, I call it, first of all, ghost notes. So as a player of any instrument, you got to have this built-in ghost note thing. Now, drummers play with ghost notes and all that, but great drummers play with ghost notes that have a sense of rhythm that's different from anyone. It's just
Wow.
almost an afterthought. So
Wow.
you don't necessarily hear the ghost note, you feel it.
Ooh.
And so the same for the piano, ghost notes on piano, same for this. The best way I can explain to you is like skipping a great person, like a little kid, a little girl skipping through the park. And she's just so natural at it. And it's almost like she's just
Right.
putting on air.
Right.
And it's also a side to side movement rather than an up and down. So in my mind, there's a rhythm to moving side to side to side. And up and down seems stiffer. So every one of my players are exactly great at that. I think it's something that's innate in them.
Yeah.
My drummer's got Spanish from his family's from, Mexico. So obviously he's got this very Latino, Spanishy, rhythmy, thing. I've got my Lebanese Catholic, whatever it is, descent. And I feel like that's made a difference with me. And also all my guys, they are all very different. My drummer before that was from Rome, Italy, Pietro Luigi Mariani, who's passed away. And you can imagine the rhythm he had.
Mm-hmm.
So much that he would play percussion in the band of Little Feat on their records and live. And his wife, Sean Murphy, who's with the Silver Bullet Band, was the lead singer of Little Feat for 10 years.
Wow.
So you can imagine
Wow.
the rhythm they must have had to fit in the Little Feat. But
Yeah.
anyway, the rhythm is extremely important. And then there's the rhythm of the show. So
Right.
you
Right.
can't all be on a different page. Your heart's racing, you're this and that. There is a calmness to all of us. And I swear, if you went and checked our heart rate, I bet they are all the same now at this
Yes.
point. And when you play arenas like Madison Square Garden and for the first time and all that, or you play for your first 100,000 people, for me, it was Saginaw, Michigan, and it was really 100,000 people. You couldn't see that far back. I was sort of, as in the mid 90s. I'd never seen a crowd like that. So it punched me in the gut when I went out there.
You bet.
Randy, I lost
Sure.
all sense of breath. So it took me a song and a half to come down and be able to sing. And that was the greatest lesson. I felt like I literally got punched by Muhammad Ali in the gut. It was a big blow to my breathing and my rhythm, and it screwed everything up on stage. So
Wow.
I've learned when I go out there, there's a calmness. It doesn't matter how big of the crowd, how whatever, what the situation is. There has to be this place where all of us are feeling exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I used to also do Red Bull before a show. And they'd go, boss, hey boss, you were a little out of sync, a little up. And I went, no, I didn't. I promise you, I didn't drink Red Bull. And they would go down in the bus where the trash goes all the way down to the bay. And they would come up and they would show me. I said, I'm sorry. I laughed. I can't help it.
I just like that you said that you do Red Bull. You do it. You don't
Right,
drink
yeah,
it. You do it.
exactly. Yeah.
I'll do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
But let me
Yeah.
tell you, they caught me and because then they would play me the recordings and I'd go, okay, I'm sorry. Because you can hear it. So it's very important that we all were in sync. But for me, it's a skip in the park and it's side to side. And we all have to feel that way and play that way.
Yeah. So it's central to your ability to make music.
Oh, it's wrong.
you know,
with
and
one.
And Steve, you can relate to this too on the golf course. I mean, I can remember playing in golf tournaments, and especially if there was a gallery, those first few times you stand up to the tee box and the knees are shaking, and it's like, dear God, just let me make contact. I don't care where it goes. Just
And
don't
you're
let
a
me
pro at this.
yeah,
You're a pro.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You have those same feelings like that? Those
Not so
emotions?
much anymore.
You know what I mean? When you were playing the best golf of your life, you
Yeah.
felt that?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And in fact, I've talked to a lot of tour players even now where, especially if it's, the Masters or we got the Ryder Cup coming up,
The big
I can guarantee you that those guys' knees will be shaking when they step up on that first tee box Friday morning.
Hey, Mike, there's no doubt. And they have a thing where they show their heart rate.
Yeah,
They did the last-
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It was amazing the difference in the folks that heart rate was going crazy. And then some that were just down.
Yeah.
Just
I don't know if performance, if they did a deal on performance, where your heart rate is. I mean, I think you can get away with having a high heart rate on the golf
Sure,
course. You
yeah,
can get away
yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
But I would imagine when you're really calm, you probably have your best bet of making the perfect rhythmic swing, right?
Right.
Well,
absolutely.
I think that's a really good call out because when we talk about rhythm of the business, the rhythm of the body is also a crucial thing for general awareness and wellness and everything else. I think you're exactly correct that this internal sense of pulse, and we talk about organizations having a pulse, and it's the same thing. This is exactly what we're talking about, the sense of tempo. And we have the SEAL teams they talk about operational tempo all the time.
Yeah.
And it is, they like a high level of operational tempo in the same sense that people like it to be busy when they work. If people don't, it's nothing worse than like working at a restaurant or something and nobody shows up.
Yeah.
But if things are cooking, then things go quicker and feel better. You can get into flow.
I interrupted Mike, but he was about to get on flow himself. So Mike, go ahead and continue. I'm sorry.
The other aspect of this and this idea of rhythm and intention, this goes back 1,500 years to the Benedictines, to Saint Benedict. And Benedict talked about this idea of when we're successful living and working in community, there is a flow, there is a rhythm. Even if you walk into a monastery today, whether it's monks or nuns, they're doing everything at the same time. They pray at the same time. They eat at the same time. They work at the same time. And there's a flow to the day. If you look at the rule of Benedict, he actually lays out when they're supposed to be praying, when they're supposed to be eating, all of that flow and that rhythm to make sure that there isn't. And I think when there isn't rhythm, and Randy, you can certainly jump in, when there isn't rhythm, it creates uncertainty. And when we have uncertainty, it creates fear. And when we have fear, it means that the things aren't going to happen the way we want them to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the schedule also allows you to have total concentration on what you're doing in that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, some of the mentors in my life have said, when you're eating, eat. Don't you can maybe chat, but don't be reading and watching TV and all these other things because
Oh, I'm in trouble.
I know. Trust me, dude. Trust me.
Who invented the TV tray? Because that was a big mistake.
That's exactly right. Yeah, right. They obviously weren't in rhythm.
Yeah.
But I mean, what it does is it pulls you out of the moment, right? So when you're in a rhythm, you can be fully in that moment. And I think it provides the structure for engagement.
Right.
And thinking of it musically, if we are all in rhythm together, then improvisation is much more likely to be both possible and good, as opposed to off the rails and a car crash, in audio. So this rhythm of the business concept is important. And I want to go ahead and frame it a little bit more and say, if you're in an organization that you feel like, okay, for us to be successful over the next 3 years, we need to fix or change 30% of what we're doing or 40% of what we're doing. In other words, we're not in cruise control. We have to develop or change or reach out or gain more funding or build new products or whatever it is. If you're in a high change situation, then what you have to do is build an innovation tempo inside the organization that is distinct potentially from the tempo of the way the business faces the customers. So
Wow.
it's like the duck's feet under the water. It's the old joke of the duck looks all calm and serene, but the little feet down there are just paddling like crazy. That's a difference between
Yeah.
what you see on the surf and what's going on below.
Wow. You can, how about the art of rowing? Teams that row. So the movies out there where you are, Randy, in Seattle, it was the University of Washington Boys in the Boat. And
Yes.
then there was one Heart of a Champion that was East Coast that I just watched. And they were training blindfolded at times. And it was, I don't know how much of it was,
Those are
ability.
legit. Both of those movies are legit in terms of what went on and how
Yeah.
it went down.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's a little Hollywood in it. But with that said, blown away by the rhythm of each person. But when they blindfolded themselves and then they had to be in sync, it was so difficult. But to me, on stage, we all close our eyes. We're all seeing each other
Yeah.
because it's way beyond the eye, the visual now.
I've always wondered, when you've got your earpieces in and you're playing live music, what are you listening to the most? What do you have turned up in your ear mod?
We don't use ears. Bob Seger was the same way. We were grateful we didn't have to deal with that. I couldn't feel the crowd. I couldn't feel the band with mine. And sometimes they'd sweat out. I'd pop one a little bit and sort of tape it. Well, when you start sweating in 100 degrees, nothing's staying in. And I felt isolated from everybody. Okay. And my whole band felt that way. And I like to hear noise on stage.
Okay.
And obviously there is you have to sync up and be a certain volume on stage. So the production guys out there where the crowd is have control of us, where we're not so loud on stage they can't deal with mixing a
Sure.
pure mix. So we work with them very well. We also have dB meters, especially for my resident show. We keep ourselves at a certain place and it's plenty loud. And so I use wedges and monitors. They're everywhere. But I have my drummer's kick drum and I have his hi-hat, which I'll catch some of his snare from that hi-hat mic. I have my voice and my guitars and nothing else.
Gotcha.
And I can hear Jason singing to the left through his monitor. Everybody's got something different in their monitors, but they have to have me because a lot of times I start the songs.
Sure.
And so there's a certain amount of this and that, but I hear everything as certain ways through certain ears. At some point, you want it all to sound like you're not listening in your left or right ear. It's just one overall thing that is just one beautiful moment or, a set that you're going like, you can't decipher where it's coming in from. It's just all coming in at one time.
Yes.
Make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
I think I think that's a great way to talk, Randy. You're talking about when we have to make change or create innovation or those kinds of things, there still has to be you've got the rhythm of the business. There still has to be rhythm within, kind of like you're talking about Microsoft. Even if you've got a different rhythm for innovation, it still has to sync up. Steve talked about
Right.
syncing up. It's still got to sync up with the overall rhythm of the business, because otherwise you've got people that are doing innovation going rogue on you, coming up with anything and everything that maybe doesn't even fit the rhythm of the business.
There you go. It's true. And if there is, for example, a mission critical thing that needs to get done, and it needs to get done fast, then you start talking about developing a tiger team or some other kind of team structure that's going to work outside, where they have permission to work outside the rhythm. Where it's like, our expectation is you guys are going to work around the clock for the next 3 months to get this thing up and running, so we can go to market in December or whatever it is. But so it becomes a formal thing when you pull a group out of the rhythm and you say, okay, you're in a different space now. It can be very empowering, but you're right, Mike. There is risk there, because you're mucking with the culture at that point.
Yep.
If we're talking individually, so you watch people like Dancing with the Stars, right? You watch Friends on that show. There's one actually, but you watch them, and obviously there's a rhythm, but they're still using their feet, their hands, and everything. What about like the Blue Angels when they're in an aircraft,
right?
And they're obviously and having to be like they are in crazy sync. And when it's not your feet, not your hands, not you're sort of right. You're in a capsule and you're going a zillion miles an hour and you're flipping and spinning. What happens when it's not your body that you're using, but your body is this vehicle?
That's right.
Is an extension of your body. That's another level of it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's a great documentary on the Blue Angels that talks about that, and talks about, I think it documents a couple of new Blue Angels are qualifying for them. And they talk about that connecting their body to the aircraft and what that feels like, and how they then have to not only do that, but then they have to connect the others
with each other
and play off the others. You're talking, literally a few meters apart at Mach 3 or whatever the heck they're going.
Insane.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you want to talk about teamwork, and you want to talk about rhythm and in sync and all those kinds of things. That's the epitome of that with what they do, especially with the risk involved, which is obviously crashing a plane and killing themselves. So I think it's really important. I know that one of the things, and Randy, we chatted a little bit about this the other day, this idea of what happens when part of that rhythm of the business includes, talk about teamwork, what happens when we have to bring teams together, whether it's on a regular basis. I just had a client the other day that talked about their Monday morning huddles. When we bring them together, does that upset the rhythm, or is that part of the rhythm? And if it's part of the rhythm, why?
Right. So this is where your mid-managers really end up, you have mid-manager appreciation when you understand that they are the ones that are actually reinforcing or disrupting that rhythm. So for example, in a huddle, let's say there is some big change that needs to happen. It might sound something like, well, we're a bank and the examiners are going to be here in 2 weeks, which means that a lot of us are going to be pulled out of our regular duties. So we need to do these 16 things this week, because we know we're not going to have the opportunity to do it next week.
Right.
So there the manager is saying, we're going to change the rhythm because of this unique thing or this distinct thing that's going to occur. And everybody's, okay, that's just fine. On the other hand, if that notice isn't given and all of a sudden the examiners are in and now all the rhythm is completely blown, then you have to go back and sort of clean up the mess after the fact. And that's a problem.
Calling an audible in the huddle with football.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. So, and the truth is the truth. If things are going to be weird, then you let the team know it's going to be weird for a couple of days, and we're going to have to figure that out. Back to the Blue Angels here for just a second. There's a chunk of work that was done by a philosopher at the turn of the 20th century, Martin Heidegger. And he says that when you use a piece of technology, and he used the example of a hammer. So you got a hammer in your hand. Now, if you've ever done a roof, I only did it for about a half a day before we decided that a nail gun was a much smarter way to go. But you get pretty good with that hammer. Boom, boom. You can drive that nail in with 2 whacks. Boom, 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 boom. And you get going and you feel manly and it's all fantastic. And so what Heidegger says is that the hammer becomes an extension of your arm. The hammer goes away in your mind. You're no longer thinking about the hammer per se. You're thinking about the act of driving the nail. Now, if you miss and hit your thumb, you have what Heidegger would call a breakdown. You suddenly notice the technology. The technology jumps into your head because it just whacked the heck out of your thumb. And now there's profanity coming out of your mouth and all kind of things. And so you now see this is a big hammer and it just whacked my thumb. Yeah. So this idea that technology becomes handed, I think, is super important. And a lot of what we're seeing in businesses now is they're putting in new stuff. They got a new system that does this. We have a new AI that. We have a thing that goes ping, whatever it is. We've got some new technology. And the statistics are brutal. When you introduce a new technology, the odds of it being used to even 50% of its potential are extremely low. And we're talking like getting to 50% of potential within like a year. I mean, it's just super, super low adoption. And so the salesman has sold you this thing. It'll do everything in the world, but people don't know how to figure out how to use it. They end run it. They try to avoid learning how to use it. They use it the same way they use the old system, right? And so this idea of finally building super users or gurus for that technology in the culture. So you tap 10 of your employees and you say, not only are you going to learn to use this, you're going to learn to master it. And you're going to become the kung fu artist that goes and teaches everybody else how to use this. But you have to seed that into the culture. Otherwise, that multi-million-dollar investment or whatever just goes to crap. And this is part of rhythm too.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I spent 5 days in Colorado with a bunch of entrepreneurs last week, and part of that conversation was new technology. And, most of them had incorporated new technology over the last year. And I would bet that 90% of them are only using a small percentage of that technology that they had incorporated. Now, the challenge was they're not a big enough company to have super users or, those kinds of things. So they got to try and figure it out themselves. And I think that as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest challenges that you have is, because you're constantly trading time for money. And do I have the time? I'm going to spend the money on this technology, but the other aspect of it is, do I have the time to master it so that I'm using it to the full extent that I should be using it in my work, in my business? And I think that's a real challenge today. And that's where I think, getting back to this whole idea of rhythm, making sure that as you're looking at that from a business or a leadership perspective, do these things fit and amplify the rhythm, or do they blow the rhythm up? Do they explode the rhythm? And I think that's a real challenge. I mean, Steve, if you've got a drummer that goes rogue on you, that's a problem.
Yeah. Every once in a while, back in my beginning days, in my high school days, when I had my first really official band, everybody was older than me, and my drummer we'd play 4 sets, and my drummer was a drinker, drank a lot of beer, and then come 4th set, it never failed. He had a microphone back there. He goes, "I'd like to thank all the ladies for coming out tonight." I'd look back there. He hadn't said a word all night, but I'd look back there and go, I'd look at him and I see his eyes back of his head, and I'm going, "Oh no!" And then all of a sudden, 2 songs later, he's off the drum. He's falling. It was like. And listen, and I was heartbroken when I eventually had to tell him I had to move on. But I loved him, and I still love him. And he got to come see me all those years later when I had hits and be backstage with us and all that. But I dared tell him that, I had to tell him because he was really, it was hurting the whole thing.
Exactly.
I never thought about it being the rhythm of a group, and that we had to be in sync like that. Really, I haven't thought about this until we brought it up today. It's really interesting. Obviously, it matters to me greatly, but I've never thought about it that way necessarily.
Yeah, we're all in a 4-legged race or whatever, an 8-legged race together, and so we are dependent on each other fundamentally. Just a quick note, because I think it's fun. It turns out that when we talk about time, we often use money metaphors to talk about time. And for the nerds in the group, there's a wonderful book by Lakoff and Johnson called Metaphors We Live By. And this list is right in the front of it, and I'm just going to rattle it off real quick. So Time is Money is the title of the list. You're wasting my time. This gadget will save you hours. I don't have the time to give you. How do you spend your time these days? This flat tire costs me an hour. I've invested a lot of time in her. I don't have enough time to spare for that. You're running out of time. You need to budget your time. How much time do you have left? Is that worth your while? Is it worth your time? And so this idea of value and time and money we're using money metaphors to talk about it all the time. And I think it speaks to the importance of this idea of tempo and rhythm in business. There's a lot of jokes about Northwest coffee stores and hipster coffee stores where you go in and say, I'll have a mocha latte, frappuccino, whatever the heck it is. And then you need to go and sit down and read a book because these people are going to take 11 minutes to make your cup of coffee.
Let's wait. Time out real quick. This is your fault where you grew up. I'm sorry, where you have not grew up. I apologize. Everything in Hawaii is laid back. Where you live now, this whole chaotic thing of having to wait for somebody while they order their 14 named. That's your fault. I just want you to know, your fault, not me and me.
I know. I'll take responsibility for it because I usually have funky hair and pierced everything. And, I will tell you though, particularly when I was working in Seattle all the time, I would slog my way into the coffee shop and I'd order a latte, something simple, but it always took at least 9 minutes before the hipster would put it on the counter and look away, sardonically and not, like whatever, dude. But it would be beautiful. When I finally picked it up, there would be some little sculpture in the foam.
That little design.
Yeah, a little design, and it would be rich. And so it was like, okay, they were pretentious and it took a huge amount of time, but it cost $6, but it was pretty darn good.
Best cup of coffee that we've had nationwide, believe it or not. Mike, get ready. There's a coffee shop. I can't remember the name. Maybe it's Pete. I don't know. In Sioux Falls, where you live, and they make the best design, but it is the best cup of coffee I've ever had.
Is it just like a shop, a coffee shop?
Yeah. What is it, Mike? It's in Sioux Falls.
I'm trying to think. I mean,
Starbucks.
You've got like Dunn Brothers or Scooters or.
I'm going to find out. I'm going to ask next show.
We'll call them out. Yeah. We'll get them on the phone. What's your secret?
My percussionist Jason knows, he lives for it.
Okay.
And I'm not exaggerating, and it's really good cup of coffee. I mean, in fact, we never get it to go. We go in and sit and eat and drink.
There you go. So this is it.
Yeah.
You're just hitting a button right there.
Oh, thank you.
My rhythm starts every morning at Starbucks, but it's quick. All I want is about 6 ice cubes in the bottom and a dark brew, and I'm good and I'm out of there.
Probably a reason why we do that, because when we used to hub, in Omaha or sometimes Sioux Falls, somewhere in the Midwest where we could get to point A to point B faster.
Sure.
And we knew the movie theaters, we knew this, and we're on this big bus in a capsule running down the highway. And so we would find these towns that were really suited to our lifestyle when we weren't doing anything. We were off.
Sure.
But we couldn't go back to Nashville, right? So we were stuck out there. And I don't know if I'd have taken the time to do that if we didn't have a bunch of time.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm going to say that. I'm not going to go ahead and pat myself on the back for being like, for doing the right thing. But
it's kind of like there's music that I will listen to in the background. And then there's music I would never dream of listening to in the background. I want to listen to it directly. I want to listen to the music.
Yeah.
Jazz for me is jazz. Every morning when we're done working out, praying, hit the jazz on. It's in the background. I rarely interpret any of it as far as taking it in. It's just part of my day and part of the Wednesday. A lot of John Coltrane,
It's working at a subtle level in your body.
But at night, if we're cooking Italian, we find a little Italian cooking channel. If we're cooking French, if we're cooking Spanish, whatever we're cooking, we sort of find the theme of the music, right? And it's pretty dang amazing what you can find. And it also opens the door to opportunities of learning new music and hearing artists you'd never heard before.
Right.
And there's a lot of talent out there.
I was looking at curry.
I go old school when I cook the Italian. I put on a little Sinatra.
Yeah. Well, he started the whole Italian cooking thing, These playlists pop up. Sinatra, Dean Martin, they're all in it, but there's also some authentic Italian music that's as well.
I was doing a curry and I was playing sitar music, Ravi Shankar sitar music really loud.
Nice.
And I thought it was fantastic. I was completely in the mood. And one of the house guests came in and said, "This music is making me a little nauseous because I can't get a hold of it." It was just all over the place. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's interesting because they weren't in the rhythm of the cooking.
No, they weren't.
That's exactly right.
Very interesting, right?
I don't think she was crazy about the curry either, but
oh yeah, you shouldn't. That wasn't a client, was it?
No.
It doesn't matter. They don't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so what we're hitting at here then, if you're leading, is being out front with the fact that there is a rhythm and
Right.
making dates on the calendar clear as to what your intentions are or expectations are around that date. So one of the stories I'll tell is a high performance team in an organization is given a really challenging job. They do their very best. They work at it kind of outside the rhythm of the normal group, and they're working as fast as they can. But because of vendors and other problems, they can't get the job done. So the leader of that team goes to the boss and says, I know this thing, we're supposed to have our presentation to the leadership team on Thursday, but we don't have an answer for you because we're still waiting on this stuff that we can't get. And the boss did the exact right thing in my impression. The boss said, that's okay. You're going to come do the presentation with what you have. Tell us how far you got. Tell us where you got stalled. And you guys are done.
Yeah.
You're done. Then we're going to put together another team that will start from where you're going to have to hand off to that team. But
Oh, that's interesting.
so in other words, they felt that the team, and when the team talked to me afterwards, they were like, I felt terrible at first that we failed. But then the
Right.
boss was like, no, but what we're not going to do is just extend the deadline. We're not going to
Yeah.
just say, oh, okay, take 2 more weeks to do it. We're going to say no, because now what have we done? Now we've socialized a whole nother team into what's so important about what that team was working on in the first place.
Yeah.
So at the end of the whole project, now you've got twice as many people who are read into the project, who understand how important it is and so forth. So it ended up being exactly the right thing for the boss to do, even though it may have felt really hard at the time to not just say, oh, take another week,
Yeah.
whatever. How much time do you need? I mean, we need the answer. He said, nope, it was supposed to be on June 15th. It's June 15th. You're done. Because then the people who come onto the team know this is a fixed timeline. If they say it's done on June 15th, it'll be done on June 15th.
Yeah.
Whether it's a win or not, you're done.
Yeah,
Make
and
sense?
I think that's interesting because I think you walk a very fine line there. In order to make that move, you've got to have trust from your people, because
Yes,
if you don't have trust from your people, that first group is going to feel like failure, and that second group is going to feel like they're taking the ball over because they failed.
that's right.
And so I think it's really important the way the leader positions that and the way that they build trust through the process, which really gets back to this whole idea of rhythm. And when you have rhythm doesn't only mean doing things at the same time. It also means doing things the same way. And
That's right.
that people understand that this is how we operate. This is how we do things. And that builds trust.
You
Uh,
think about every huddle you've ever been in, team sports, when there's multiple people on a court or on a field, whatever. You have a clock, you have time. The
Yeah,
game's going to end at this point. And guess what? You're playing awful. You're being replaced. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into a game that, you've got to be ready to make change and
right.
adapt and
Yep.
figure out how you're going to get to that end of the clock when it's all said and done, whatever quarter it is, and you're going to go, do we have more points on the board than they do?
Right.
And that builds confidence and trust in your coach and all that. When it fails a lot, then you question it, of course.
Yep.
So you're a basketball guy, Steve, too,
Yeah.
right? So I have marveled at when you see a player get hot, draining threes again and again and again and again, and you go, wow, how did that happen? And then when you see a player that was hot go cold,
Oh yeah. But
how
that's
does that
shooting.
happen? And
That's
so this
shooting.
this gets into the business of rhythm and flow. So
Right.
that the person draining the threes is just in this groove. The basket looks as big as as a hula hoop, and they can't miss. And so when the rhythm is right, the flow emerges, and so that's kind of what you're looking for.
Best example, if you go all the way to the top, Reggie Miller, you think of great shooters, Ray Allen, but then you think of Steph Curry, right?
Yeah.
Steph Curry is the greatest three-point shooter ever in the history. We won't ever see anything like it. He was doing it in college. It's funny, his road there had to go to Davidson. Not had
Right.
to. I don't mean that in a bad way. That was beautiful because he was playing against the Dragons. And his brother, obviously, Seth, got to go play at Duke, I think Duke or Kentucky Duke.
Yeah.
And nobody even paid attention to the fact that their dad, Steph's dad, was Del Curry
No,
and had a
great. Yeah.
big NBA career. And he was NBA. I'm sure these kids like the Mannings, Archie's kids, were being prepared for being to be a pro, right?
Right.
There's a difference between that level to being a pro and being successful and having staying power. Well, Seth would make 10 in a row, right? And then he would make, I remember Kerr said, I've never seen anything like it. He was 0 for 11. And then he made one and he started shimmying like he had made, like he started shimmying, like, look at me. Well, he doesn't even have recollection probably of missing.
Missing them.
Because
Yeah.
his misses are like that far from maybe in makes, right? And so you think about him more than any, and you have to give, that's the one on the court. You may sit him down for a minute to give him a breather, but they're the irreplaceable ones. So in business, when you got Steph Curry there, right? And you're going to sit there and change the flow of that. How long do you bench the superstars that are there in a conference room?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's a big question and a legit question.
I want some answers. I mean, come on. I mean, don't make me act like the professor.
So what I would say is that, you've got, when you've got those key people, those people that are obviously the ones that have either the relationship with the customer or understand the product better than anybody else. I think it's really important that what you do is use that individual for that job. And the thing I see happen all the time is, let's say, okay, Mike is really good at sales and he knows our product better than anybody else. So I'm going to send Mike out to solve that problem. And he does. And so then there's another problem and I go, well, Mike solved that problem. I'll send him to go solve that other problem too. And Mike solves that problem too. And before long, Mike is getting bitter and worn out, and other people are getting steamed because Mike is standing in front of them, in front of their places. So if you've got that 3-point shooter and you want to get that person on the floor at the right time for the game, do that. But then you protect that role for that individual and don't try to make them, because they can shoot threes, suddenly have to do everything else.
By the way, 3 points counts more than 2. I just want everybody to know that. In my day, the 3 point wasn't there, until
I think the other thing too, a good leader knows their people. Steve Kerr knows Steph Curry.
Yeah.
He knows that if he's just in a cold streak, he's going to let him keep shooting. However, he also knows that if he's tired, that if he's just not on his game, that if he's slightly injured, he's not going to let him keep shooting. He's going to sit him down. And I think that's the challenge for any leader, is understanding your people so well that that, hey, everybody's going to go through a slump. But is it a slump or is there something else going on? And I think that's
the competitor that a Steph or any of the great competitors we've seen. They don't want to hear it or want to know it.
Right.
They don't. They just play through it.
Yep.
The great competitor.
And I think that's why. I mean, you look at Phil Jackson and Steve Kerr. Look at Jackson with Michael Jordan. There were times when Jackson had to sit Jordan down, whether Jordan wanted to sit down or not. And he could sense that. He could sense when he needed.
You're going to tell me exactly the day, time, what game. Well, let me ask you this. Y'all think about this. You think about the Bulls, because Cliff Levingston was here at our charity event this year. And he was telling me, because he played for the Pistons first when they had Isaiah and Lambeer. And then he moved over to play for Dominic Wilkins with Dominic. And then Jordan wanted him. So I can't remember if he filled, if Rodman came first or did Cliff, 91, 92. My timeline's going to be off. But the bottom line was, you think about it, Steve Kerr, Paxton from Notre Dame, and B.J. Armstrong, right? Yep. They were 3-point guards. They were exact in the way they played. So they would plug and play those 3-point guards over that series of 6 championships. They had Cartwright, and they would have a replacement for him. They had Horace Grant, and they would have a replacement for him. They literally plugged and played literally the same body shape.
Right.
And the same kind of player that allowed him and Pippen to be the 2 players that never changed. So the Will Purdue's, and they had other guys that were just Longley and Purdue. They were interchangeable. They were the same guy. And it was really interesting how they figured out the rhythm of their team would be subject, and their championships would be subject to picking these players that literally were so identical at that spot on the court. Yeah. It's crazy to me how they were able to do that. Usually there's a different characteristic, a different player that comes along that's like nobody else on the championship team. And they're all so unique, but these guys were almost clones of each other at their ability to play and like they played and why they did. Cliff was a rebounder and a defender, and he was known for that. And he's well documented. I don't know if we talked about it on our show before. So sorry if I'm a broken record, but he talked about when he first got to Detroit, he said, Isaiah can score. Lambeer can score. Dumars can score. All these guys scores. He goes, I got to find my place. And he said, oh, I realized that they needed somebody to be a nightmare of a defender and a rebounder. And I made my career out of that.
Very, very wise.
Yeah. I mean, how do you even know that at 22 years old to know to do that?
Right.
When you've been a scorer, you made the Elite Eight at Wichita State.
Yep.
You've averaged 18 points a game back then when the 3-point line probably didn't, I don't even know if it existed back then, but a big guy and knows to be that smart to give up that part of it.
It's a huge lesson for the young people that are coming into businesses today. And they're standing around sometimes going, well, what are you going to tell me to do? And it's like, open your eyeballs and look around and see what needs to get done and find that groove. John Currents, who runs a restaurant in Oxford, Mississippi, runs several restaurants in Oxford, Mississippi. There's a picture of him in front of his cookbook, and he's kind of a grumpy Gus, apparently, as a chef. But he's holding up his hand like this, and written in Sharpie on his hand are the words "do something." And so that's what he in the kitchen when somebody's sitting there, they're just standing around looking. He's like, "Do something. Find your lane. Get busy."
Isn't that the difference in every team, every business, everything that ever has people involved? You find your all-stars. They're the ones that just built to not have to tell them about it because they're way ahead.
They're looking at everything and they're figuring it out.
And don't think that the CEOs and your band leaders and your coach and all these guys don't know that. Everybody sees it by the work they put in, and they're a step ahead of instruction.
Yes.
And those are the ones that change the way things happen. Those are the ones that make Michelin star restaurants and championship teams and probably championship businesses, right? Businesses that go off and be incredibly successful. They got to have a lot of those people, depending on the size of the business, I would imagine.
And and just to kind of wrap things up here, I think the key from a leadership perspective is, number one, establishing that rhythm, establishing the rhythm of the business, and understanding that that's what gets people into a zone that allows them to succeed. And we talk about it on the golf course all the time. When you lose the rhythm of your swing, you're in trouble, but when you're in rhythm, it allows you to move a step closer, which is, Randy, you talked about flow. And that idea of flow. And when you get into flow, you see guys making a whole bunch of birdies. And and you'll ask them, well, what happened? And all of a sudden I was just in the zone, they'll say. Well, that's flow. And so as a leader, being able to create that environment in your business, in your organization, and then as someone coming into that organization, and I think we can especially see this in younger people coming into the work world today, that idea of that's on the hand, do something. Don't stand around and wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Go do something. Go take ownership of it. And if the leader gives you that opportunity to take ownership of it, man, grab it and run.
Yes. Ask those questions that get you engaged. The last thing I'll share about that is that, when you are in rhythm, it implies that you have a beginning and an end. And so I really like this idea of kind of coming off the blocks or the starting gun, that and there's courage to that. And I think about the kids playing jump rope on the sidewalks like they used to back in the day. And you'd always sort of wait before you could jump in. And so timing to jump into that flow and being a part of it and not tripping up the jump rope, right? So that's what we're looking for, is how do you get into the groove with a business? And if you're not sure, you ask the questions and you put yourself out there and you take some criticism, right? And you find your lane to the basketball story.
Yeah. You find your lane at work, and that when everybody finds their lane, it completes the puzzle, right?
That's
Absolutely.
right.
It happens, magic happens, right? Success happens.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
All right, Steve, send us home.
All right. You've been listening to Resonance, and I do play the role of Gilligan here on this show. Got the people right there, Mike, Carol, the professor, and Randy Harrington. And these guys are fantastic guys. We really appreciate y'all tuning in. We have enjoyed starting this process together. And selfishly, I love to learn from these two brilliant minds and minds that have great heart and soul.
Let us know what you're thinking in comments whenever you can. We're very interested in your feedback.
Follow us, share us, and so we can have, keep doing this. It's fun.
Yeah,
We're having a great
absolutely.
time. We appreciate each and every one of you for paying attention. Really did.
Check us out at resonanceleader.com. All of the links to all the major platforms are there. If you want to watch the three of us on video, go to the YouTube channel. We're there as well, called Resonance Podcast. So, guys, until next time, we'll see you later.
Later on.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.